This is The Other Side. My name is John, and tonight we're going to talk about the Men in Black phenomenon. Just know new videos come out Tuesdays and Thursdays. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below letting me know what future content you'd like to see. Let's get into it. It was September of 1976 in a quiet town in Maine. Dr. Herbert Hopkins was a respected physician. He was also working as a consultant on a local UFO case. One evening while his family was away, he sat alone in his home reviewing his notes, when suddenly the phone rang. On the other end was a man who claimed to be a fellow UFO researcher. He asked if he could come over immediately to discuss the case. Hopkins agreed, hung up, and started to look back at his papers. But then, just as quickly as he hung up the phone, there was a knock at the door. Whoever this man was, he had arrived impossibly fast. Hopkins opened the door, and standing there was a figure that he claimed looked off. The man wore a perfectly pressed black suit, but it was oddly outdated for the time period, like it belonged to another decade. His skin was unnaturally pale, almost waxy, and when he spoke, his voice was slow, deliberate, and strangely robotic, as if he was mimicking human speech rather than producing it naturally. Throughout their conversation, Hopkins noticed bizarre details. The man's lips barely moved when he spoke, but the words came out anyway. His movements were stiff, almost mechanical, and at one point when the visitor stood up, Hopkins saw that his black hat seemed to be covering a completely bald, almost plastic-looking head. Then things got truly disturbing. The man instructed Hopkins to destroy all of his UFO research. Every single file. Hopkins said he felt hypnotized, drained of willpower, as if his thoughts were being tampered with. By the end of the encounter, when the man turned to leave, Hopkins described his movements as unnatural, like a malfunctioning machine. After the visit, Hopkins discovered large portions of his memory had gone blank. He could hardly recall details of the UFO case at all. And he wasn't the only one. For decades, people across the world have described almost identical encounters with the so-called Men in Black. So the question is, who or what are they? Are they government agents, shadowy enforcers of a UFO cover-up, paranormal entities in human form, or something even stranger? To understand the legend of the Men in Black, we have to go back to 1947, the same summer as Roswell, when UFO sightings were exploding across America. That June, a man named Harold Dahl was boating near Maury Island in Washington. With him were his son, his dog, and two other crew members on his boat. Suddenly, 6 massive donut-shaped crafts appeared in the sky. One of them sputtered, as if malfunctioning, and began to rain molten debris. The metal fragments smashed into the boat, injuring Dahl's son, burning the crew, and killing his dog instantly. Dahl gathered some of the strange debris as evidence. The next morning, Dahl claimed he was visited by a stranger, a man in a dark suit who knew exactly what had happened on the water. Dahl said the man told him, "What I have said is proof to you that I know a great deal more about this experience of yours than you will want to believe." The man warned Dahl to never speak of it again, and if he did, bad things would happen to him and his family. Shaken, Dahl backed away from the UFO story. though the Maury Island Incident would later become one of the most controversial UFO cases in history. But more importantly, it marked the first reported encounter with a Men in Black. A few years later, in the 1950s, another figure would take the legend even further. Albert K. Bender was a UFO obsessive. He created the International Flying Saucer Bureau, the very first worldwide organization dedicated to flying saucers. His group connected people across the globe, published newsletters, and collected sighting reports. Bender truly believed he was on the edge of exposing the truth when it came to UFOs. But then, the visits began. Bender later described being confronted by 3 men dressed in black suits with glowing eyes. They didn't just intimidate him, they terrified him. He said they could appear suddenly in his home, even in locked rooms. And when they spoke to him, it felt like their words were pressing into his mind rather than coming from their mouths. In his own words, Bender later wrote, "They made me promise to stop delving into the saucer mystery. I was also told I would be closely watched. I was not frightened. I had been made to comply by the pressure they had put upon me." Not long after these encounters, Bender abruptly shut down the International Flying Saucer Bureau. His official explanation? Quote, "I have been advised not to divulge the secret I have learned in my research. The answer to the flying saucer mystery is known, but the world is not ready for it." Both Harold Dahl's warning and Albert Bender's intimidation created the foundation of the Men in Black myth. And the similarities between the two are impossible to ignore. Both involve UFO witnesses or researchers. Both describe mysterious men who appear and they seem to know too much. And both end the same way, with silence, fear, and UFO secrets buried. From the very beginning, the Men in Black weren't just mysterious visitors. They were enforcers. Whether government agents, aliens, or something else entirely, their role was always the same: to keep the truth from ever getting out. Both Harold Dahl and Albert Bender describe being silenced by mysterious men in black suits. Their stories, one on the waters of Maury Island, the other in the living room of a UFO researcher, became the foundation for the Men in Black mythos. But here's the problem. Not everyone agrees on what these figures actually were. Some believe the answer is very simple: that the Men in Black were nothing more than government agents, sent to intimidate UFO witnesses during the height of the Cold War. But others insist that these visitors were not human at all. Their pale skin, their mechanical speech, their otherworldly presence, their unhuman nature. These weren't government G-men, they were something far stranger. This split has haunted the Men in Black legend ever since, and it leaves us with two very different possibilities. Were the Men in Black spies, or were they monsters? Let's start with the rational explanation: government intimidation. In the late 1940s and 50s, UFO sightings were everywhere, and so was paranoia. The U.S. Air Force created Project Blue Book, an official program that investigated UFO reports. They sent agents across the country to interview witnesses, collect evidence, and quietly shut down rumors before they got out of control. To any ordinary citizen, a couple of stern men in suits showing up at your house asking about what you saw in the sky that could easily feel like a Men in Black encounter. And the truth is, the government was watching UFO groups closely. FBI files from that era show that civilian UFO clubs were infiltrated, surveilled, and even harassed. To Washington, anybody talking too loudly about flying saucers might just be a Soviet plant spreading disinformation. So in this view, the Men in Black weren't aliens or monsters. They were simply government investigators doing their job in the age of nuclear secrets. But here's where the folklore makes things more complicated, because witnesses didn't just describe intimidating agents. They described beings that seemed plain wrong. Their skin was pale, waxy, almost artificial. Their suits were outdated, like they had stepped out of another decade. Their speech was mechanical, sometimes robotic. Some struggled with basic human behavior, fumbling with utensils, misusing words, not understanding common objects. If these were really government men, why did they act like something pretending to be human, but not quite getting it right? That's why by the 1960s, the Men in Black legend was split into two camps. One side argued that they were spies. They were flesh and blood government agents tasked with silencing UFO witnesses. Or they were something paranormal. Creatures wearing a disguise. Entities sent to confuse or terrify those who got too close to the truth. And as we move forward, Men in Black encounters only get stranger. The more you look into Men in Black encounters, the harder it is to believe that they were just government agents. Because the details, they're too strange. Take the case of Robert Richardson, 1967, in Ohio. Richardson reported hitting a UFO with his car one night, only to find that the object vanished before he could ever recover it. Days later, two Men in Black suits showed up at his home. At first, they seemed normal, until Richardson noticed their speech. It was flat, halting, almost like they were reciting memorized lines without understanding what they were saying. When Richardson told them he no longer had the UFO fragment, they exchanged a glance, and without a word, they turned and left. He reportedly never saw them again. Then there's the Niagara Falls hotel encounter from 2008. Two employees claim that after their manager reported a UFO sighting, two men in black suits entered the hotel. Security cameras caught them on film. Both were tall, identical in height and build, with an unusual pale skin, bald heads, and eyes described as too big and unnervingly blue. Witnesses said that the men moved in sync, almost mechanically, and they asked bizarre, intrusive questions about their manager. When they were told the manager wasn't there, they left to never return to the hotel again. And then, one of the most disturbing details, their inhuman mannerisms. In multiple accounts, Men in Black seem to confuse basic human behavior and not understand what they're doing. In one famous story, a man in black sat at a diner across from a UFO witness. When his dessert arrived, a simple bowl of Jell-O, he stared at it for several long moments before awkwardly trying to drink it like a soup. He became visibly frustrated, as though the very act of eating was foreign to him. This is similar to Herbert Hopkins' encounter in 1976, the physician in Maine that was a consultant on a UFO abduction case. He described completely unnatural creatures, extremely pale, hairless, dressed in perfectly pressed black suits. They had bright red lips, but Hopkins noticed they looked more like lipstick painted onto the skin than natural lips. Even stranger, the man at his house seemed physically weak and uncoordinated and almost robotic. During his visit, he ordered Hopkins to destroy all evidence related to a UFO case, including tapes and notes. Toward the end of his encounter, in an eerily mechanical voice, he said, "My energy is running low. It's time for me to leave." The visitor fumbled his way to the door, awkwardly descended the steps, and vanished into the night. Hopkins was so shaken by this encounter, he immediately complied and destroyed every piece of evidence he had been working on. But that case is a turning point. Unlike earlier G-Men encounters, the Hopkins story paints the Men in Black as something inhuman. Not government spies, but something from the other side. These aren't actions of trained government agents. They sound more like imposters, beings trying and failing to wear a human mask. Which raises the question, what are they really? If they're aliens, then the Men in Black are the ground-level enforcers of a cosmic cover-up. If they're interdimensional entities, then their strange behavior might be the result of crossing into a reality where the rules of human beings don't quite apply. And if they're tulpas, creations of belief itself, then every time someone fears them, every time their story's told, like right now, they become just a little more real. Seen this way, the Men in Black don't just sit alongside UFOs. They sit alongside shadow people, black-eyed children, and trickster spirits. Creatures that seem to exist in the gray space between folklore, nightmare, and reality. And yet, while folklore has made them terrifying, Hollywood has done something else entirely. Because while real witnesses described soulless mechanical creatures, pop culture has turned them into a punchline. When most people hear the phrase, Men in Black, they don't think of shadowy figures knocking on doors late at night. They think of sunglasses, memory-erasing gadgets, and Will Smith cracking jokes alongside Tommy Lee Jones. Hollywood turned the Men in Black into heroes, protectors of Earth, keeping us safe from wild aliens and covering up the chaos with style and humor. But here's the problem. When you take something rooted in fear and mystery, and you turn it into a comedy, it does something very deliberate. It makes the original stories sound ridiculous. So when someone like Albert Bender or dozens of other frightened witnesses claim they were stalked by strange men who barely seemed human, people roll their eyes. Oh, like the movie? Got it. In other words, pop culture acted like a shield, protecting the government or whatever these things are by hiding the truth in plain sight. Yet at the same time, those very movies, TV shows, or even memes online keep the legend alive. The Men in Black were never forgotten and haven't been. They've shown up in the X-Files, Fringe, countless conspiracy books, and now across TikTok and Reddit. But if you strip away the Hollywood polish, if you go back to what the witnesses really said, you'll find the stories are much darker. Because witnesses don't describe smooth-talking G-men. They describe things with waxy skin, robotic voices, strange fits of laughter at the wrong time, clothing that looks like it's decades out of place, and just weird people These aren't government spooks with gadgets. These are intrusions of something from the other side. So while Hollywood gave us flashy gadgets and jokes, the people who really live these encounters, they'll tell you that the men in black are not here to protect us. They're here to intimidate, silence, and remind us that we're being watched. And here's the kicker. This isn't just Cold War folklore. It's not stuck in black and white history books. The men in black are still showing up. Only now, instead of knocking on doors, they're caught on security cameras and going viral online. By the late 1990s, most people thought the men in black were nothing more than comic books and Hollywood films. But then, something strange happened in Niagara Falls, in Ontario, Canada. We've mentioned this before. A security camera inside a hotel picked up something strange. Two tall men dressed head to toe in identical black suits, black hats, black trench coats walked into the lobby of a hotel. Their movements were wrong, stiff, almost robotic. Staff described them as identical, with pale, expressionless faces, no eyebrows, and no eyelashes. They didn't ask for a room, they didn't ask for food, they didn't ask for anything that could be accommodated. They asked for a manager who had recently called in a UFO sighting. The manager wasn't there that day, and when the staff told the strangers, they turned in perfect unison and walked back out the door and were never seen again. That grainy CCTV footage is still floating around online today, and it's one of the closest things we have to proof of the men in black and whether it's a hoax or not. That day in 2008 reignited a fear in UFO circles. Maybe the men in black hadn't gone anywhere. By the early 2000s, stories had started to pile up again. UFO researchers began reporting late-night knocks on their doors, shadowy cars following them home from conferences, strange men slipping into the back row at lectures. One Canadian investigator described receiving visits from men who seemed to know details about his research that he had never shared publicly. Others said the men in black had gone digital. Instead of showing up at your door, they'd hack into your email, delete files from your computer, or flood your phone with silent calls. One researcher in the UK claimed years of UFO notes vanished from his hard drive overnight. Another said his interview with military whistleblowers were wiped after two anonymous men wanted him to, quote, stop asking questions. Then came the 2010s and 2020s, the age of Reddit, TikTok, and online UFO forums. And suddenly, the men in black weren't just part of old conspiracy books. They were trending again. Reddit threads appeared where users claimed men in black suits showed up at their workplace after they reported seeing strange lights in the sky. Others posted about drones hovering outside their apartments after they wrote about UFO encounters online. Some even said their posts were shadow deleted within minutes, leaving only eerie comments like, "You shouldn't be talking about this." Whether these were trolls, copycats, or something real doesn't matter. What matters is the folklore keeps adapting to fit the modern age. The men in black move with the times. In the 50s, they were in trench coats and Cadillacs. In the 2000s, they were hackers and they were surveilling people who reported UFOs. And now, maybe it's bots, anonymous accounts, and disappearing data. But that raises the question, if UFOs are real, and today the US government itself is admitting that unidentified aerial phenomena are in our skies, then who or what is working behind the curtain to keep people silent? In 2023, a Pentagon whistleblower named David Grush testified under oath that the US is in possession of non-human aircraft. His claims made international headlines, but not long after, other insiders warned that people who talk too much often find themselves pressured, stalked, or discredited. Sound familiar? It's the same pattern described since the 1940s, a pattern that looks exactly like the Men in Black. So the final question is, if UFO disclosure is real, if the government is truly holding on to technology and bodies from somewhere else, would the Men in Black still be out there protecting those secrets? Or maybe they never left. When it comes to the Men in Black, these encounters are creepy enough on their own. But the bigger question is, who or what are these people? Theory 1 takes us straight into the world of government secrecy. Imagine you've just seen a UFO or snapped a photo of something that shouldn't exist. Not long after, a black car pulls up outside your home. The men who step out aren't aliens, but maybe something scarier. Agents of your own government. According to this theory, the Men in Black are real-world intimidation squads dispatched by agencies like the FBI, CIA, or some other nameless branch of the intelligence agencies. Their mission? Not to erase your memory with flashy gadgets, but to pressure you into silence. The suits, the sunglasses, the bizarre behavior, it's all theater. It's meant to unnerve you, to make you second guess whether sharing the story is worth the risk. Some UFO researchers believe this explains the very first Men in Black cases from the 1950s. Because in that Cold War world, secrets were currency, and intimidation was the tool of survival. But theory 2 is where things get otherworldly. What if the Men in Black aren't human at all? Some witnesses swear these figures don't just act strange, they are strange. Their skin looks waxy, their movements mechanical, their speech is broken. One woman even claimed that when a supposed man in black drank water at her kitchen table, he didn't seem to know how. The liquid dribbled down his chin, like the act of drinking water was completely foreign to him. If these accounts are true, it suggests the Men in Black aren't government agents, but part of the cover-up themselves. Aliens policing the evidence of their own existence. Imagine a cleanup crew from another world, not sent to kill or abduct, but to manage the fallout whenever humans get too close to the truth. Then there's theory 3. This one pulls us into even stranger territory. Some researchers believe the Men in Black are not physical beings at all, but interdimensional tricksters. Think of how often they appear right after somebody has a paranormal experience. Not just UFO sightings, but even hauntings, cryptid encounters, and psychic events. The Men in Black show up like shadows, bend reality just enough to make you question it, such as making pennies disappear in front of you, and then vanish. Paranormal investigators point to the eerie similarities with old folklore. Fairies that steal people away, shadow people that linger in bedrooms, even the Hat Man that countless people report seeing at night. Could the Men in Black just be the latest mask worn by something much older and much weirder than the government or aliens? Finally, there's theory 4, the most skeptical explanation. Maybe the Men in Black don't exist at all, at least not in the way we imagine. Instead, they were a product of psychology under stress. Think about it. You've just seen something impossible. A UFO, a glowing orb, maybe even a creature that you would describe as an alien. Your brain scrambles it to process it. Fear, paranoia, and cultural influence mix together, and suddenly you remember an encounter that feels real, but may not have happened as you recall. Mass hallucinations, sleep paralysis, paranoia, all of these could explain why the men in black often sound like dreams made real. Skeptics argue that once the idea of the men in black was in UFO culture, people unconsciously wove it into their experiences. And yet, none of these theories fully explain everything. If the men in black are government agents, why do they sometimes act like they're learning how to be human? If they're aliens, why are they obsessed with suits and cars? If they're interdimensional, why focus on a UFO witness specifically? And if it's psychological, how do we explain the multiple cases caught on camera? And maybe that's the enduring mystery. Each theory explains a part of the puzzle, but none of it explains it all. The men in black remain exactly where they've always been, standing in the shadows, at the very edge of our understanding. Let's return where we started. Dr. Herbert Hopkins, sitting alone in his Maine home in 1976. The quiet evening shattered by a knock at the door. Two men in black, pale, stiff, moving like machines. They demanded he destroy his UFO research. And when he looked into their eyes, he swore he was staring at something that wasn't entirely human. Hopkins complied. He erased the evidence. But the memory, the fear, and the mystery, that stayed with him forever. Decades later, the stories haven't stopped. From the Maury Island Incident in the 1940s to Albert Bender in the 1950s to the grainy CCTV footage in Niagara Falls to Reddit threads, black SUVs, and phone calls in the 2020s. People continue to encounter these faceless, unnerving figures. Some say they're government agents. Some whisper about aliens. Others insist they're interdimensional tricksters or the collective fear of humanity made into flesh. Each theory explains a small part, but doesn't explain it all. So tonight, as you think about the skies, the shadows, the unknown corners of the world, consider this. If UFOs are real, and people who keep seeing them keep reporting the same faceless visitors, then maybe, just maybe, the men in black are real too. This is The Other Side. My name is John. Thank you for tuning in. I apologize that I'm sick and I sound like I'm dying right now. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like spooky stories. I love you all, and I'll catch you on the other side.